I knew it was over the second I saw my children's mattresses wedged down the basement stairs, damp air, spider webs, a single cracked window, and heard my mother say, almost cheerfully, they'll adapt. That was the exact moment the old version of me died and the new one, the one made of iron and fire, took her first steady breath. My name is Nora Hale. I'm 35, a pediatric nurse who works 12-hour shifts with kids who fight like warriors, and the single mother of two 10-year-old twins, Theo and Lily. He's the quiet kind of brilliant, the child who sketches elaborate cities on the backs of homework sheets and sees stories in shadows. She's sunlight with elbows, fast, outspoken, stubborn in the name of fairness. If an adult lies, Lily will tilt her head, narrow her eyes, and say, "That's not how you said it yesterday." 2 years earlier, their father and I had split. Adrian and I had been together for 12 years, and the end arrived the way winters do in our town of Willow Ridge, slowly, then all at once. By the last cold snap, he was a stranger who lived in the same house. The divorce emptied my savings and my spirit. Shared custody. Minimal support. The arithmetic of survival didn't work without help, and there was only one place left to turn, my parents' house. "Just until you get your feet under you," my father, Dennis, said, patting my shoulder with the same hand he used to point out everything I'd done wrong. My mother, Carol, offered a thin smile that made my stomach clench. They cleared their upstairs study and called it a bedroom for the twins. I took the guest room that still smelled faintly of my grandmother's perfume. I bought groceries. I cooked. I folded towels in neat stacks and placed them in the linen closet as if order could be a kind of prayer. I reminded my children to say please and thank you even when they were being shushed for breathing too loudly. If you're wondering, yes, things had always been complicated. There's a family story we tell at barbecues about the time my little brother Mason invented the neighborhood lemonade stand and sold out in 10 minutes. The true version is that I baked the cookies, made the sign, handled the change, and Mason stood on the curb yelling, "Buy it." The punchline is always my mother laughing. Mason's a natural-born leader. I don't remember anyone noticing I also existed. I learned to exist anyway. I put myself through college, then nursing school, and accepted the night shifts nobody wanted. It didn't matter that my hands shook the first time I pushed epinephrine in a code, or that I sat in my car after a bad shift and cried until sunrise. I did it. I built a steady life. Mason, meanwhile, dropped out of college twice, launched a startup my parents funded, and finally found success with a logistics app that earned more in a quarter than I had in a year. The math of love in our family was as simple as it was brutal. My effort equaled expectation. His effort equaled applause. I could live with that. What I couldn't live with was watching it swallow my children. The first months under my parents' roof were manageable. The twins rearranged the study into a fort of books and blankets. We ate sheet pan dinners I whipped together between shifts. On Friday nights, if I wasn't working, we watched old adventure movies and pretended the rumble of the furnace was a dragon purring. I saved every spare dollar in a plain envelope tucked under a stack of oncology journals because I knew nobody in that house would move those. Then Mason and his wife, Brianna, had a baby boy. They named him Owen, and my parents' world tilted on its axis. In a week, the formal dining room became a nursery, hand-carved crib, diaper warmer, white noise machine that sounded like waves crashing on a beach we'd never taken a family vacation to. My mother began carrying Owen around like he was the last heir to some glittering throne. My father announced, unprompted, that he had never felt so alive. At first, I tried to be gracious. New babies reorder gravity. I know that professionally and personally. I told Theo and Lily, it's not about you. It's the novelty. But novelty is a thin excuse when it's wrapped around a hierarchy your children can feel in their bones. It started with gifts. On the twins' birthday, they each unwrapped a sweater, a puzzle with the corner taped back on, and toothbrushes my mother called practical. Owen, then 6 months old, received a toddler tablet, a designer stroller for when he visits, and a silver rattle engraved with his initials. My father beamed. My mother said, that's what grandparents do. Next came the refrigerator. One afternoon, I stood with a carton of milk in my hand and stared at the space where Theo's pencil drawing, a city of bridges and light, had been. In its place hung the schedule of Owen's naps, feeding times, and bowel movements stuffed into a plastic sleeve, surrounded by photos of him sleeping on his father's chest. When I asked, "Where did Theo's drawing go?" my mother replied, "Oh, it looked messy. I filed it somewhere." Somewhere, it turned out, was the recycling bin, damp and wrinkled between circulars and coupons. "You threw it away?" I said, my voice too calm to be safe. She tilted her head, the picture of innocence. "It's just a drawing, Nora. Don't be so sensitive." Insults came disguised as jokes. "Isn't it funny," my mother said, "how Owen is already so expressive? It must be the Roberts genes. Brianna's maiden name is Roberts. No offense," she added to me. Adrian's side wasn't exactly athletic or artistic. She said it in front of Theo, who held his breath and blinked like he was underwater. Later that night, I found him erasing and redrawing the same small rooftop over and over. "Is it good enough yet?" he asked. "For Grandma." I told myself to last until spring. My savings envelope grew thicker. I took an extra per diem shift every month. I brought my own packed meals because if I ate from the staff lounge, it felt like stealing time from some other mother working to leave a place she didn't want to be. Spring arrived with the smell of lilacs and the gut punch announcement at my parents' kitchen table. Mason and Brianna were beginning a top-to-bottom home renovation. "Foundation, kitchen, nursery," Mason said, bouncing Owen on his knee as if he were demonstrating the word priority. "It'll only be 8 weeks. He said 8 the way a magician says, 'Watch this.'" My mother clapped. My father said, "Say no more. You'll stay here." I opened my mouth. "We're all ready. We'll make it work," my mother snapped. Family helps family. You, of all people, should understand that. Of all people, in my mother's dictionary, translates to you who owe us. The very next weekend, my parents emptied a closet for Brianna's clothes, space I'd never been offered, and set up a portable crib in the room next to the twins. For night feedings, my mother cooed. I watched as Theo and Lily pushed their own storage boxes tighter into the study's corners. "It's okay," Lily said with a bright false smile, the kind you put on for a substitute teacher. "We'll make room." Room became a hunger that ate everything. Our after-school hour of TV vanished. Brianna watched home renovation shows at a volume that could drown out a thunderstorm. Lily's jump rope disappeared from the back porch. "Too noisy," my father said. Theo's homemade cardboard city was scooped into trash bags because it looked like clutter. There were new rules. No bouncing balls in the yard. The baby is sleeping. No clarinet in the afternoon. The baby is sleeping. No laughter that carries down the hall. The baby might sleep. One Saturday, I came home from the hospital to find Lily sitting on the back steps in her soccer cleats, her cheeks flushed from crying. "Grandma says I can't practice because, guess what? The baby is sleeping," she said, kicking at a patch of dirt. "And he's not. He's in the living room, Mom, watching a cartoon about a talking trash truck." Theo stopped bringing his art to the kitchen table. He began to say, "Never mind," as a reflex. I recognized the posture too well. The making of yourself smaller until you disappear. Working the pediatric floor means learning to recognize a spiral while it still looks like a circle. My colleague and friend Revnea found me in the supply closet one night, inventory sheet in my hand like a shield. "You haven't looked up all shift," she said, gentle as a nurse who's spent a lifetime being the one person children trust with pain. I told her everything in a low, steady voice, like a patient's vitals I couldn't change. Revnea listened. When I finished, she said, "If this were a chart, we'd call for a consult. This is not a safe environment for your kids' hearts." Her words landed like a diagnosis, not of failure, but of reality. That very night, I emailed a landlord I'd been quietly messaging for weeks. The house was older, the rent a stretch, but it was in our school district, and the kitchen window looked out on a little elm that caught the morning light. We met on my dinner break the next day in a drizzle that turned the sidewalk into a blurred watercolor. The landlord, Mrs. Patel, had eyes like mine, tired, kind, unwilling to pretend about anything. "You'll keep it clean," she said, glancing at the pressed uniform I still wore. I told her I would, and I meant it more than I'd ever meant anything. We signed a lease that night. Move-in date, 1 week from Tuesday. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell the twins. Not because I didn't trust them, but because hope is a fragile thing and I couldn't risk it being manhandled by my mother's disbelief. I hid the keys in a tin of loose tea at the back of my closet. I set up utilities from the hallway outside the neonatal ICU, where the reception was better. I ordered 2 twin bed frames, a used sofa, 3 lamps, and a rug that looked like a map of somewhere we could choose to go. We almost made it to move-in day. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon while I was charting medication reconciliations for 3 new admissions and coordinating a transfer with a short-tempered resident. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. I stepped into the medication room to check. There were texts from Theo and Lily stacked on my lock screen like a tower about to tip. From Theo, Mom, they're moving our stuff. From Lily, Grandma says we have to move downstairs. From Theo, Grandpa says we should be grateful. He says Uncle Mason needs real rooms. From Lily, it's gross down here, Mom. It smells like wet cardboard. I can hear something scratching in the wall. My chest went cold. I called home. No one answered. I called again. It rang and voicemail swallowed my voice. I told the charge nurse on duty that I had a family emergency. She didn't ask questions. Go, she said, already moving to cover my patients. It took an hour to sign off, another 20 minutes to drive, and in those 40 more minutes than I had words to fill, I imagined 100 versions of what I would say. The one that came out was simpler. My keys stuck in the lock as if the house were resisting. The living room smelled like lemon cleaner and Triumph. The twins sat on the couch, pressed shoulder to shoulder, faces blotchy from quiet crying. My mother stirred tea in the kitchen with Brianna. The spoon clinked against the cup. A lullaby hummed from the baby monitor on the counter as though mocking the silence. There were fresh scuffs on the hall wall where bed frames had scraped. Our study, my children's room, was stripped to bare carpet. The basement door was open like a mouth. What is going on? I asked the twins first, because I have learned to ask children the question adults will answer with lies. Lily launched into my arms so hard I stumbled. Theo said, very softly, we don't get the good rooms anymore. I walked into the kitchen. Why are my children's things in the basement? My mother didn't look up from her cup. We rearranged. It's more logical. Brianna lifted the monitor like evidence. Owen wakes at night. We need a nursery next to our room. And my company is fully remote now. I need a home office. So you moved my 10-year-olds into an unfinished basement. I could feel my voice fill the room and press against the walls. Without telling me. They're not babies, my mother said, as if that were the point. They can adapt. Besides, our other grandson is here during the day. Your kids are at school. It makes sense they don't need the space as much. Other grandson, I repeated, the phrase landing like a stone on the kitchen island between us. Footsteps came through the back door, my father and Mason, with Owen in a carrier strapped to Mason's chest like a trophy. My father said, cheerful until he saw my face. You're home early. You moved my children's beds to the basement, I said. It's temporary, he replied. Don't be dramatic. I put down carpet remnants. It's fine. It's not fine, I said. There's mold. There are no proper egress windows. Theo has asthma. You always make everything a crisis, Mason sighed, bouncing the baby. Kids are resilient. We grew up rough. Didn't we, Brie? Brianna, who grew up in a gated community 40 minutes from here, nodded solemnly. When people show you who they are, believe them the first time. When they show you who they are 600 times, believe them and act. I went back to the twins. Their eyes were huge, searching my face for a map. I gave them one. Pack your bags, I said, and for the first time in months, they didn't ask for permission to hope. My father followed me into the hallway. Oh, for heaven's sake, Nora. Don't make a scene. This is not a scene, I replied. It's a decision. We gave you a roof, he snapped. We took you in. You took us in conditionally, I said, with a ledger I could never balance. I paid for groceries, cooked your dinners, cleaned your house, and made my children small so your golden boy could feel big. I'm done. Mason laughed, an ugly sound. Where will you even go? Not your concern, I said, and it never will be again. They tried all the old tricks as the twins zipped backpacks upstairs. Guilt, revisionist history, the invocation of family as a chain. My mother said, "You always were jealous of your brother." My father said, "Don't expect to come back." Brianna said, "You're overreacting. It's just a room." Mason stayed quiet then, sensing perhaps that words were no longer tools that could work on me. Lily came down with her clarinet case and a stuffed fox with one ear chewed. Theo carried his sketchbooks and a battered telescope he'd bought with saved allowance. They were shaking, yes, but they were also taller somehow. I took their hands, and we walked out into a sky the color of slate. My mother ran to the car window, actual worry breaking through the performance. "Where will you go?" she asked. "Where will you sleep?" "Somewhere our worth isn't measured against someone else's convenience," I said, and drove away. We spent that night at Reina's. She had made up the spare room with a quilt that smelled like line-dried cotton and lit a small lamp that turned the walls warm. The twins fell asleep mid-sentence. I stood in the doorway and let something finally unclench in my chest. Reina pressed a mug of tea into my hand and squeezed my shoulder. "You did the right thing," she said. Simple as air. True as a pulse. The next morning, I took a personal day. We went back to my parents' house to gather the rest. I brought 2 suitcases, a calm voice, and the refusal to be baited. My father opened the door as if I were a salesperson, not his daughter. "Have you come to your senses?" "I've come for our things," I said. My mother sat on the sofa, eyes rimmed red. "You made me sick with worry," she said. "We didn't sleep." "You slept fine the night you put my kids in a basement," I replied quietly. "You just didn't think about them when you lay down." I sent the twins upstairs and followed them because upstairs was safer than downstairs for conversations like this. The kids packed deliberately, each choice a declaration. Lily put in her soccer jersey last. Theo added a box of colored pencils wrapped with a rubber band. "Do we take the lamp?" he asked. "Take what you love," I said. "We can replace the rest." When we came back down, my father stood in the foyer blocking the door. "You can't afford this," he said. "On a nurse's salary?" "Nurses keep whole hospitals from collapsing," I said. "I make $68,000 a year, Dad. I have good credit. I have no debt except a small car loan. I've been saving since the day I moved in here." He looked startled, as if he had never imagined I might be competent in ways that didn't benefit him. He opened his mouth, closed it, stepped aside. We moved. Friends from the hospital showed up with casseroles, a second-hand microwave, and laughter that softened the corners of the day. The house smelled like dust and beginnings. In the twins' rooms, we built the new bed frames and stretched sheets that didn't match. We ate pizza on the floor and toasted with paper cups of ginger ale. That night, when the door clicked shut on the house that was ours, I went into the hallway and leaned my forehead against the wall and let the slow, shuddering gratitude wash through me. Freedom has a quiet sound. It's the hum of your own refrigerator. It's the whisper of your children's sleep without fear. It's the space between breath and breath where nobody is judging the way you take it. The first week was a honeymoon of the ordinary. Lily practiced her clarinet after dinner and nobody told her to stop. She hit a clean G and grinned like she'd won a medal. Theo sat on his bed drawing late, then tiptoed to my room to show me a sketch of our new living room with us in it. 3 stick figures with crowns of scribbled curls. There was a square on the wall labeled window. Outside it, he'd drawn a tiny tree, leaves bright as coins. "It looks like it's breathing," I said. He nodded. "It does." At work, the promotion I had applied for months earlier came through. Charge nurse on the pediatric unit, a role that terrified and thrilled me. The hours improved. I could read to the twins 3 nights a week. We fell into rituals. Sunday pancakes with too many blueberries, Wednesday library runs, Friday night board games Reina joined on her weeks off. We discovered the elm outside the kitchen window caught the late afternoon sun and broke it into coins of gold on the linoleum. On those days, the whole house glowed. My parents called. They texted. The messages slid along a spectrum from fury to pleading. "Come home," my father wrote. "You're embarrassing us." My mother left a voicemail crying that babies needed quiet, and didn't I understand? Babies needed quiet, but my 10-year-olds didn't need dignity? I did not respond for 2 weeks. When I finally answered, I set terms in a clear voice I practiced in the mirror. We will see you, I said, at a neutral place for lunch. There will be no discussions about moving back. There will be no comments about the twins' father or their worth compared to anyone else. If that happens, we will leave. They agreed. They were late. My mother hugged too hard and smelled like her rose hand cream. My father stared at the restaurant's ceiling fan as if it were a concept he didn't approve of. The twins wisely sat on the booths inside and let me anchor the aisle. "How are your new arrangements?" my father asked, the word arrangements sour. "Home is good," I said. "We miss you," my mother added. "We miss the children." Lily said, in her bright voice, "You moved our beds when we weren't home." Theo kicked her gently under the table, attempting to spare my mother's feelings even as his own still hurt. My mother flinched. "We were tired," she said. "It was a long day. We didn't think it through." "That is the problem," I said. "You didn't think of them at all." We paid our half of the bill and left before dessert. It felt like an act of mercy for all of us. News travels in families the way wind moves through wheat. My Aunt June, the only person in my extended family who had ever once asked me, "What do you need?" and meant it, came by with brownies and a hammer. She and Lily hung a shelf in Lily's room for trophies, present and future. "I'm proud of you," June said later, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Not just for leaving, for staying gone." Without me at my parents' house, the machine that ran on my quiet competence sputtered. The sink filled with dishes. The laundry multiplied. My mother's energy, given so eagerly to Owen, ran thin. My father's patience, never much to begin with, frayed. I didn't hear any of this from them. I heard it from the grocery store clerk who also happened to be my neighbor, from a cousin's text, from the way my mother's voice sounded grainy when she called and pretended nothing had changed. Mason and Brianna stayed with my parents until the renovation stretched beyond its supposed 8 weeks into 4 months, because that's what renovations do when you plan them with entitlement instead of a timeline. Without a built-in housekeeper and cook, the shine wore off. They went home before the work was complete and argued so loudly in their driveway that June could hear it from the corner. It's not that I wanted them to suffer. I didn't. It's that I needed the universe to whisper, even a little, the sentence my parents had never learned to say: consequences exist. "Do you think they'll ever see it?" Theo asked one night as we ate pasta and watched the lamplight find the map of the rug. What they did. He wasn't angry, only curious, as children are about everything from gravity to fairness. "Some people never do," I said, honest because I refused to lie to my children the way adults lied to me when I was little. But sometimes they see part of it. And sometimes that's enough to make the next day better. He thought about this and nodded. "I like it here," he said. "It's like there's more air." In the spring, Lily made the advanced band and scored the winning goal in a regional soccer game. My parents came to watch without telling me and stood at the edge of the field like ghosts. My father lifted a hand as if it weighed something. Lily saw them, then looked at me. I lifted my eyebrows. She shrugged, a willful softening, and waved once. Afterward, my mother cried quietly in her car, June told me later, smudging mascara she had just learned to apply from online videos. My mother had always been beautiful and brisk. I imagined her in the rearview mirror, older than she'd been allowed to admit. The next month, my father asked to look over the inspection report for a small house I wanted to buy, nothing fancy. A cottage with a porch the color of faded sea glass and a backyard large enough for Lily to dribble a ball and Theo to set up a telescope on clear nights. The bank had said yes. The lender had said my credit was excellent. I had done it, piled up the pebbles of steady days until they made a small hill called enough. My father sat at my second-hand table flipping through the report like he was grading homework. "You'll need to budget for a water heater," he said. "Maybe a roof in 5 years. He paused, cleared his throat, and added, almost too softly to hear, "I'm proud of you." It was the sentence I had wanted since I was old enough to tell the truth about anything. It arrived decades late and still landed like a miracle too shy to knock. "Thank you," I said, and I didn't dress my answer in anything fancy. Sometimes the cleanest thing you can be is direct. My mother visited the new house as we painted Lily's room a brave shade of sky. She watched Lily roll paint in careful stripes, Theo tape edges with a precision that made the corners straight. "I've been thinking," she said at last, holding the tray while Lily swapped rollers, a small act of service my mother would have deemed menial a year earlier. "After you left, the house felt too big. I kept expecting you to walk in with a casserole. I didn't realize how much you did." She squeezed her lips together, then said, as if it had cost her something to carry the words across the air, "I'm sorry. It wasn't perfect. It didn't undo. It didn't make the past neat. But the apology carried weight because it admitted harm without insisting I pretend it didn't happen. On moving day, we opened the new front door and laughed when the hinges squealed like a cheerful ghost. Friends carried in boxes and shouted, 'Where should this go?' And I said there and there and there and felt like a conductor leading a small orchestra of good hearts. June brought lemonade with too much sugar. Revnea assembled a bookcase with Theo while Lily and I argued lovingly with a rug that refused to lie flat. In the late afternoon, the elm outside, not ours but friendly, lit up like a lantern tree, shadows scattering in its gold. The house breathed. We breathed with it. After everyone left, the twins and I sat on the floor eating takeout lo mein from the cartons. They told me 3 good things about their day, a ritual we had invented when we needed to remember that goodness was possible. Lily said, "I like that my room smells like paint and not like grandma's soap." Theo said, "When I look out my window, I can see the moon over the tree." I said, "I like that you are both here and we are safe." We made a little ceremony of bedtime. I tucked each child into sheets we'd washed in our own machine and smiled at how ordinary the moment was. Ordinary felt like a cathedral. On my way out, Lily caught my wrist. "Mom," she said, her eyes suddenly big with seriousness. "If they ask us to come back, we're not going, right?" I kissed her hair. "We already are where we belong." Months later, my parents invited us for Sunday dinner. I agreed, with the boundary I carried like a backpack. We leave if anyone diminishes the twins. We walked into the same house that had once felt like a test I was always failing and found the table set with pot roast because that was Mason's favorite, although he and Brianna had texted an hour earlier that they had plans. My mother flurried. My father uttered opinions about the city council. The twins sat composed, no longer hoping to be seen, because they are seen at home. That is the secret. When a child is seen in the place that matters most, the glare of other people's blindness doesn't burn as badly. After dessert, my mother pulled me aside to the back porch. The yard looked smaller. The maple my father had once pruned into a perfect shape now sagged on one side. "I can undo," she said without preamble, "but I can do better." "Doing better is the only apology that works," I said. She nodded, as if she, too, had finally learned that language was not a currency you could spend instead of action. Mason drifted back into our story eventually, not as monarch, but as something far more human. He showed up at Lily's soccer game and stood alone near the concession stand, hands deep in his jacket pockets. "Congratulations," he said to her afterward, awkward, eyes on his shoes. "You're fast." Lily blinked. "Thanks," she said, and didn't invite him into any story that didn't belong to him. Progress comes in sizes. That was the right size for that day. Here's the part where I tell you about revenge. It isn't what I thought when I was younger, when I believed revenge meant slamming a door and making sure your echo hurt their ears. My revenge is quieter. It's the steady sound of my children laughing in rooms nobody can exile them from. It's the knuckle-deep dirt under Lily's nails after planting marigolds along the fence. It's Theo's telescope clicking into place on a spring night while he explains to me, solemnly, the way Jupiter leans into its storms. It's bills paid on time. It's a key I own. It's the new dent on the coffee table where we dropped a toolbox and said, "Well, now it looks like ours." Sometimes I drive down my parents' street, turn the corner, and keep going. The house is the same dull beige. The porch light still flickers because my father insists he'll fix it himself. The ghosts of who we were wave politely from the lawn. I keep my hands steady on the wheel. In the back seat, Lily and Theo argue about music in the tolerant tone of siblings who like each other most of the time, which is to say, always. I catch their voices in the rearview mirror and think there. That sound. That's the life I built when I chose us. On the anniversary of the night we left, We made a cake crooked as the path that brought us here and ate it on the porch steps with our feet bare and our hearts full. Theo handed me a drawing he'd been working on for weeks. 3 figures holding hands, a house with light in every window, and a tree out front with coins of sun caught in its leaves. On the back he'd written, in his careful print, Home, version 2. I laughed and cried and tucked the picture into a frame above the mantel. We do not go back. Not to the house. Not to the old rules. Not to the self that thought the only way to keep love was to be smaller than you are. My parents visit sometimes and they're careful now, and when they forget, we leave early, and I do not explain this to anyone because explanation is a currency you spend when you want permission. I already have mine. If you are listening to this and wondering whether you are allowed to leave whatever is killing your spirit with 1,000 small cuts, here is my permission if you need it. You are. Here is what will happen when you do. At first, everything will feel too quiet, and you will mistake that quiet for loneliness. Wait. In that quiet, your own voice will return. It will be hoarse at first. It will grow stronger. In that voice, you will tell your children the truth, that love is not a prize for good behavior. It is the ground they stand on. And in that truth, they will lift their heads without waiting for someone else to nod. The night my parents moved my children's beds into the basement was the night I realized the story I had been living wasn't a home. It was a hallway. We walked through it and out the door and into our own rooms with our own names on them. I shut the door behind us and I locked it and I threw the old key away. The best revenge is not a speech. It's not a slammed door or a perfect comeback uttered in a kitchen lit by a failing bulb. The best revenge is a life so grounded in your own worth that no one can move your bed without your consent ever again. And that is what we have now, a house where Lily can practice until the neighbor claps from his porch, where Theo can tape his drawings to every surface until the walls look like a museum of ordinary miracles, where I can set my alarm at 5 a.m. for a charge shift and not dread the hours because I know what waits at the end of them is ours, messy, loud, beloved enough. We don't whisper when we laugh anymore. We don't ask permission to breathe. We have our rooms. We have our light. We have each other.